So, who responded? Where did they come from? And what disabilities did they have? After Atos, respondents came from all over Britain to fill in our survey and give their witness as to what Atos Healthcare was doing in their lives. So what type of disabilities or conditions did people have who responded? On the survey, people were allowed to tick more than one box. So an overall picture shows that the majority had physical disabilities of 48%, 31% had mental health, 5% had multi-complex disabilities, 4% were mild learning needs, only 5% were alcohol and drugs, and this was usually a secondary coping mechanism to deal with their physical disabilities or mental health problems or dealing with trauma. And although the severe learning needs comes out at 0%, there was one who the carer had to fill in that they were severe learning needs, but although they couldn't respond to the assessment or advocate for themselves, they were actually written off as fit for work. 7% described their problems and some of their symptoms as behavioural. Behavioural, I left that to the respondents, would be any kind of behaviour coming from the condition which would be a problem to themselves or others or in a situation of work. The next question was to whether the condition was temporary, intermittent, permanent, or deteriorating, or in fact terminal. 67% had permanent conditions, 16% had intermittent, 15% had deteriorating, and only 2% was temporary. But the 2% which was temporary was usually one of the second or third diagnoses after the main condition. What kind of diagnoses were being pulled in and called to be assessed? Of course, everyone had a first or major diagnosis. As can be seen, this covers quite some serious conditions, such as heart attacks, stroke, neuropathology. In mental health, there is severe post-traumatic stress syndrome and complex trauma syndrome, bipolar, generalized osteoarthritis, multiple sclerosis, ME, and many conditions which not only can you see that they are serious from the list, but actually are suggested to be exempt from being called to the Atos medical assessment by the Atos DWP rules and guidelines themselves. The first question must be, have you taken the Atos medical assessment? 96% said they had, 2% said no, it had been decided that they were too ill to attend or go any further. But surprisingly, what after Atos found from doing the survey, that 2% did not have to attend as deemed too unfit to attend a medical, and yet in their absence and without a medical assessment, they were actually judged and a decision made that they were fit enough to attend a back to work group and a limited fitness for work group. Very curious that you're deemed too unfit and ill to attend a medical assessment, yet you are deemed fit enough to regularly attend a back to work group. This is one of the surprising findings and outcomes which came from doing the After Atos assessment, which we would not have expected, but we're very happy that this has been now made clear, which shows why the After Atos assessment is essential and much needed to get a clear picture of what is actually happening and a true picture of how Atos, DWP and the government are actually managing and mismanaging the lives and needs and welfare of the most vulnerable people in this country. How many took additional supportive evidence like GP letters and consultants' reports? It's split down the middle, that 50% took additional evidence and 50% didn't. But of those who didn't take any, they said that they hadn't been informed or advised to do so and really did think that they were attending a genuine medical. But then again, of those who did take additional evidence with them, 85% said that the assessor refused to acknowledge them, look at them, receive them, and when the reports came back, it was said that they hadn't provided any additional evidence at all. So what was the result of the assessment? Of the 126 who responded, over 78% were found to be fit for work, and only 22% were found not fit for work. In the following slides, you can see by the column on the left of the decision of being declared fit for work or not fit for work at the side of the types of conditions that these decisions were being made. I've highlighted some of the conditions, hopefully for raising the issue of how many serious conditions and chronic illnesses are being struck off their benefits and deemed fit for work when really they should be entitled to care, support, kindness and consideration. As you can see, Atos and the DWP are breaking their own rules and guidelines as to who should and who should not be called for the medical assessments. And so the tragedy goes on. Here is our first typical After Atos case story example. The respondent is J, who is the carer for a husband with a stroke, pulmonary vascular problems and a fractured leg not mended. She had to fill in the After Atos survey as her husband is incapacitated to do so, and she had to speak and advocate for him at the Atos assessment, and yet he was declared to be fit for work and to attend a limited capacity group. First of all, left in a waiting room for 1 hour and 30 minutes before assessment. Assessment took in total 15 minutes, and when we received a copy of the medical, although the assessor put in answers, some of these were not even mentioned in the assessment. The veracity of Atos assessment has to be questioned. It was very rushed and very quick, and did not give my husband time to fully answer questions before moving on to the next. In fact, this so stressed my husband out, he ended up in hospital the following day following a collapse while out. This brings into question the Atos assessment and the respect to the person, to the disability, and to the ability to actually answer the questions, especially when the person is suffering from a stroke. Being put in a limited capacity for work group means having to do all this again. Also, with new ruling and having worked previously and being put on contribution-based ESSA, this will finish completely next year and will not be able to claim JSA. Because my husband cannot work, and also he will get nothing anyway because I work. Do the government and Atos and DWP understand and comprehend that the support and the withdrawal of support and financial support to disabled also impacts on their partners and the actual working members of their households? Have they understood this, and have they contemplated this? Finally, could not continue with making a complaint as husband in hospital in the following day, but definitely will next medical. Does the Atos assessment understand the way that they do not only disable people by their assessment, by the process, but by the consequences afterwards, which actually causes them to even be more disabled, more distressed, and incapacitated, that many do not have the energy or the resources or the health to go forward and even to contest and complain. The outcome was the husband was placed in a limited capacity group, although he had a stroke and collapsed following the Atos assessment, and couldn't even represent himself in the assessment as his carer and his wife had to do so. Atos has to be questioned.